We are live from Hofstra University in Hempstead, New York. This is the site of the first presidential debate. After months of attacking each other from afar, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton will come face to face on the debate stage. The two candidates are caught in a very, very tight race, with the latest polls showing them in a dead heat. I'm joined now by a veteran panel of political observers, including CBS News contributor and former Face the Nation moderator Bob Schieffer, CBS News correspondent Nancy Cordes, and CBSN political contributor Rick Davis. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bob, what are you going to be looking for from both candidates tonight?
Which one comes off as most presidential? Which one who leaves the impression that they can better handle the awesome responsibilities of the presidency? These debates are not just about issues. People want to get a measure of these people. Who are they? Do they have the courage? Do they have the grace under pressure? How do they react to one another? I want to hope we get a better picture of both candidates, and that's what these debates are for, and if we're lucky, that's what we'll get.
The optics are hugely important, Nancy. Hillary Clinton has been criticized by both people who support her and those who don't support her, that sometimes she comes across as too wonky, too condescending, too sort of Miss Know-It-All. Is that something that they're trying to temper tonight?
Yes, in this particular debate, because while she has done some 26 presidential primary debates, more than any other modern presidential candidate, she's, generally thought of as being pretty good in this format. But she's in a situation where she does want to call Donald Trump out when she feels that he is stretching the truth, or putting it the way the campaign would, lies about what they say are very important things. And so she wants to be able to point those out, and yet she doesn't want to come across as a scold. And somebody who's more focused on what he's saying than what she wants to do for the country. The interesting thing that her campaign has been saying today is that they have grown increasingly convinced that it's going to be a more somber Donald Trump that we see tonight, a more restrained Donald Trump than we saw, for example, in the primary debates when he was talking about Lion Ted and Little Marco and all the rest. But they say that's not enough. That is the bare minimum that you should expect from a presidential candidate, is that they can hold it together for 90 minutes. They say he also has to show that he's got a command of the issues, and that, as Bob Schieffer was pointing out just now, that you have to understand exactly what the job entails and what could be coming at you.
Rick, how difficult is it to prep a candidate against another who has some of those intangibles, some of the things that Bob was talking about? I'm thinking specifically about John McCain and Barack Obama. Barack Obama was charismatic. He didn't have the experience that Senator McCain had. He didn't have all of the policy issues that the senator had participated in, but he was extremely charismatic. How do you prep somebody for going up against, for lack of a better word, sort of a rock star type?
Well, there's the pro and the con, right? There's the pro, which is how do you use your talents and experience to project that through. So with John McCain, it was his experience and knowledge of foreign policy and national security, keep the country safe, kind of message. In a post 9/11 world, that's an important thing. And with Barack Obama, it was the hesitations voters had about his experience. So they prepped him to show that he could not only, as Bob said, be presidential as a young man who had really not been on the political scene very long. That was a really high hurdle for him, and by and large, a relatively low bar, because as we found out, he could be very presidential.
And so, Nancy, I think for a lot of people, they're expecting that because Donald Trump doesn't have a mastery of the policy issues, perhaps the way Secretary Clinton does, that he's going to be easy to defeat. But we saw that in debates with, for example, Al Gore and George W. Bush. A lot of people said, well, Bush is not going to be, he's got a good understanding of local politics and perhaps in Texas. But when it comes to these national issues, Senator Gore is going to be much better prepared. And he came off sort of trying to give off that vibe that he was really, really smart, but it really turned a lot of people off.
This is one of those situations where you don't want to be the one that everyone expects will win. And unfortunately, that is the situation where Hillary Clinton finds herself. In fact, a new Washington Post poll just came out today that shows that some 10% more Americans believe she'll win tonight than Donald Trump. The problem is that then you have one stumble, or your opponent does better than expected, and suddenly they're seen as the winner, or at least they're given that most improved badge. And so, once again, her campaign has been just hammering home this point that most improved is not enough. They acknowledge that, yes, she has an advantage when it comes to the issues. Yes, she has talked about this much more than Donald Trump has, but they say he's had lots of time over the past 17 months to catch up and to understand not just the issues, but what his own positions are, and areas where he hasn't put forward any positions. And so they say that he needs to, show that he can talk about these things, not just for 30 seconds, but for 2 minutes straight.
Nancy, let me ask you, where, and I'm not asking you to reveal sources, obviously, but where are these stories coming from in the in the Clinton camp that they're going to try to, come up with some zingers, that they're going to find some way to throw Donald Trump off the tracks to try to irritate him and all of that. So, I mean, what I don't understand about that, if that's a strategy, and it's certainly a legitimate strategy, why would you tell it?
Yeah,
why would you leak it out in front?
Right.
As you know, there are a lot of people in Clinton world who think that they are in the inner circle when they aren't necessarily, or there are people who hear things. I can't tell you how many times, some stray piece of news will come our way, and then you actually ask the people in the know in the Clinton camp, and they'll say, that's absolutely not happening. I don't even know where you're getting that from. I was in the room and nothing like that took place.
Right.
So I do think that some of that is coming from, this massive Clinton blob. All these people out there who can lay claim to some part of the debate. But I think there has also been a game going on to try to get under his skin even before the debate happens.
Right?
The Mark Cuban thing, putting him in the front row, saying we're going to bring up, how much he loves Putin. We're going to talk about how is he really worth as much as he says he's worth.
But don't you think those things have backfired? I mean, in other words, I think the pre-debate, how about Jennifer Flowers? And I think that was a whole couple of days of talking about Jennifer Flowers.
I think that's a bad call, isn't it? To say, because that's sort of, I was asking a panelist earlier, I mean, by saying I'm going to have Jennifer Flowers there, that's sort of, a lot of women said that's insulting to women, not just to Hillary Clinton. It's insulting to women to have the former.
Well, I don't think those things are really digging into the fabric of a campaign, right? No one's putting that up on a TV ad or campaigning around. That stuff we all get wound up on,
right.
And I wouldn't get too far afield on how that's affecting the women's vote. It's all intramurals. It's the game that gets played between these campaigns. And I think that, frankly, they'd all be much better off stop playing those games, right? And just deliver the candidates who are prepared.
I think it's beneath the dignity of the office that they're both seeking. And I mean, I just think, I've always said my standards aren't too high, but I got some.
I mean, when we were
this
pushing
is the wrong campaign, man, for you, Bob Schieffer.
I mean, I think it's interesting that when now you have debates, when we were doing them with John McCain, we wanted people in the audience he could look at and get support from, not to try and intimidate the opponent. And I think those are the kinds of things that are constructive devices to be able to help the candidate get through what's otherwise a very difficult night.
What'll be interesting as well is, there are a lot of people sort of decrying the lost civility that exists in American politics. I'm not sure if ever really existed, but Bob, backstage, do you meet the candidates separately before the debate? Do you meet them just to say, what goes on?
You don't have any.
The first time you see them is when you get on the stage.
Contact at all with them until you walk out on the stage.
Really?
And, the other interesting point, and people keep talking about all this fact checking and stuff, the moderator, it's the moderator's job to come up with the questions to ask, and there's nobody in his ear that's going to help him fact check, because the debate commission does not want to be partisan, and they feel like, if they had producers and people telling you, this is right, that's wrong, the only person that's in your ear is the director, who's telling you how much time you have. And so, people talk about all this. This may be a little harder than it looks.
Right, just a little bit.
But the Clinton camp argues that this is a unique situation where you've got one candidate whose pronouncements are rated false by PolitiFact 70% of the time. And that's just unlike any other candidate in modern history. And they say it shouldn't fall just on her.
This is just working the refs. I mean, this is the same thing that the basketball coaches do. You jump all, they're saying, the moderator ought to be in there. They don't want the moderator to be objective. They want it to be the moderator and Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump. Just like Donald Trump wants it to be Donald Trump, and the moderator against Hillary Clinton. And the reason they want the moderator to be doing all this fact checking while he's saying we don't even need a moderator, they don't want her being, seen as the Miss Homework, who's correcting every single thing that the guy does.
And don't forget, every time the moderator ever does play that role, they get hammered by the media and the campaigns for interjecting themselves into what is otherwise a candidate debate. So there's no upside to it whatsoever.
We are not electing a moderator. We're electing someone to be president of the United States.
Is it a mistake, Rick and Nancy, that Donald Trump decided not to follow traditional prep and having someone play Hillary Clinton and having that person act out the way that she might and throw maybe zingers, maybe policy questions? Is that a mistake for him? And is it a mistake for her, Nancy, to just do it the way it's always been done and perhaps not keep it loose the way he intends to do?
I think that the Trump campaign and maybe Trump himself decided we could prep until the cows come home, and he's still not going to be able to cram as many facts about policy into his head as Hillary Clinton has. So better for us to say, oh, we didn't really prep that much. And then when, he's not quite as deep as Hillary Clinton is on some of these issues, we can say, well, what do you expect? He's a businessman. He's not a politician. Of course, he's not going to know these things. What you don't want to do is say, wow, we really worked as hard as we possibly could, and we still didn't, quite have a mastery of these issues. I think also it's just a fact of life that Donald Trump is Donald Trump. He's never been a big fan of prepping for debates. He's made that very clear. So there's just so much that the campaign can do to really force him to buckle down.
It may be just what it appears to be. He may think he doesn't need it.
Well, look, he's been spending a lot of time in front of the camera for the last 20 years, and I think he feels like the medium is kind to him. And the reality is he's not going to probably try to be someone he's not. And that's a mistake a lot of candidates make. They try to refabricate themselves in the course of a debate, and then they can't pull it off. So I think what you'll see tonight is the typical Donald Trump and a very typical Hillary Clinton.
One last question before I let you go. The Roger Ailes effect. He's also a master at television. He's advised former presidents. He's advised former politicians, especially in this medium. Clearly, there's going to be a moment where Donald Trump is going to wait for an opening and attack Hillary Clinton with a zinger. What do you think? How do you think that effect plays with the campaign?
I think Roger is one of the most talented debate coaches of the century. I mean, when you look at the sort of debate whisperer he was for Ronald Reagan and others, and I know when I was running John McCain's campaign, we could always go by and see him and get some really valuable advice in advance of every debate, even though he was running a network. But that being said, I think one of the things that's underestimated, especially by people looking into these debates, is the use of humor in a debate. And I think that was one of the things Roger Ailes encouraged Reagan to do so successfully, because it was a natural thing for him. And it's a little sharper edged with Donald Trump, but I think you would see probably a good success for Donald Trump tonight if he used humor to try and deflect some of the negatives associated with him.
All right, Bob Schieffer, Rick Davis, stand by. Nancy Cordes, you're going to continue doing your job, which is reporting.